Welcome back to another episode of Shots to the Dome. I'm your host, Sean McDevitt. And my guest today is not only an old friend, but we also swam together at the University of Georgia. And he's also a client of mine who dropped 40 pounds, 40, in his fitness journey. And he had so much fun that we're now bulking and adding mass to his frame. And I thought it would be so cool to have my friend Chris on the show to talk about his experience and hopefully help others who are on their own fitness journey. With that, what's going on, Chris?
Hi, everybody.
And you are chilling. Please tell people where you are because you have a really nice backdrop behind you.
I'm on Lake Wedowee in Alabama, which is just about an hour and a half west of Atlanta. So we spend some long weekends in the summer.
A much better view than what I have behind me in front of me at the moment. So very envious. I appreciate you, Chris, hopping on to the podcast during your vacation. That's really kind of you. But I want to get into basically the impetus for actually, before going into that, because it really impacts your fitness journey. What do you do for a living? Now you finished swimming. You and I finished at Georgia. You graduated. What do you do now?
I'm a pilot for Delta, so flying all over the country.
What are some of your favorite routes?
I don't necessarily have a favorite route. I have places I like to go, but those could be from anywhere. I mean, I like to go to Boston, Austin, Salt Lake City. I've always loved San Diego. San Diego has a soft spot in my heart. But other than that, I mean, usually the bigger cities are the more fun ones to go to, as opposed to, like, say, small Midwest country cities.
No
Just
shade.
more to do.
No shade to anybody living in those small Midwest cities. What motivated you to become a pilot?
My dad was a pilot, so I grew up flying all over. I would go on trips with him from a young age, all the way through college. I would just go hop on one of his trips and just tag along. Free flight, free hotel. So it's fun to see the country, see the world. So.
And catch up with old friends. I know there were many times that you were in Austin, you'd hit me up, and I really love staying connected with you after Georgia. Can you tell people how tall you are?
I'm 6'6".
So is the cabin tight for you? Have they made it bigger?
It depends on the airplane. So I'm on the 320, and so that has a much more spacious cockpit. I started off on the MD-88 at Delta, and that was a lot tighter, a lot older. And that was not as roomy, that's for sure. So I'm comfortable where I'm at.
Very solid. So Chris Thompson, if someone hears you on the mic, they can come up and be like, hey, I heard you on this podcast, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Always welcome to come up.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that, Chris, giving us your background. The reason why I asked and why I feel it's important is because you were a machine with your fitness journey, with your macros, and with your protocols. And that's very challenging when you're flying. I know you would probably respond with you weren't flying all of the time, but on trips or those weeks where you had trips, you weren't missing a beat. And so I'm excited to dive into what helped you do that. But before, I want to go back to that first question of what was the impetus for your fitness journey? Like, why did you sign up with DLDNation?
Well, I had always assumed, just with our swimming background and our strength and conditioning background, that I knew everything, at least everything that I needed to know. And that proved wrong. So I'm sure we'll get into it later, but injuries and lack of results kind of drew me to do it. And then I was just getting a little more unhappy with myself. I was happy with the scale going up, but then I kind of quickly realized it's not necessarily in the best way. And then I saw you in Gold's Gym on a way over one day, and we got to chatting, and you kind of convinced me to try it out. And so here we are, a year and a half later, almost 2 years later.
That fateful day in Gold's Gym when I didn't know Chris was in town, and Dayla and I just happened to be in the gym, and I noticed this very good looking gentleman who was lifting. It was a 2-level thing, and you were like up on the 2nd level, and we saw each other, and then
I texted you and gave you shit about your floral tank.
My favorite floral tank, dude. That thing is getting really like I put it on yesterday to go to the gym, and I was like, no, I can't do this. It's got maybe like 3 washes left in it.
Oh well.
So you and I talked, and you had mentioned your fitness goals to me, and I had said that I'd love to have you on the team and like be your coach, and it would keep us together.
Yep.
There was something that I mentioned about nutrition and macros that specifically I think really inspired you to join the team. What was that, if you remember?
I don't think I think at least a couple dozen times I've had you tell me how nutrition is a hack. So that was kind of what, not necessarily what drew me into it, but I know I was very reluctant to do the macro or the nutrition with you. I said I just wanted to do the coaching, like the actual like exercising. And you convinced me to try the nutrition, and I was very reluctant because I didn't want to count macros and all that kind of stuff, especially being a pilot and being on the road. Did not want to do it, but just being able to be consistent and have your accountability, it made it a little bit easier. So I gave it a couple weeks, and it wasn't actually that bad. It took some adjustment, but it worked for sure. That's for sure.
I appreciate you trusting me with that, because as you found out, nutrition can be a huge hack. Because I think what's unique about your and my relationship is, like you said, I already knew that you knew how to train and that you were really committed as far as getting to the gym. For those listening, I mean, anyone who's a D1 athlete, y'all know what's up. For swimmers, we were in the water probably about twice a day. We were also lifting weights. We were doing a lot. And so I knew that Chris was going to be consistent in the gym. But just like Chris mentioned, I didn't know anything about macros and nutrition either until I went into my own fitness journey. And then now it has become that hack to not only reach my goals, but then maintain them and know what I'm eating, et cetera, et cetera. And so sort of diving into the macros and the nutrition of it all, Chris, you'd mentioned that it took a little bit to get going with them. So I'd love for you to talk about what were some of the challenges that you found with tracking macros, and then what were some ways that you overcame those challenges?
I would say the biggest challenge would be if you're not planning stuff out and getting towards the end of the day, you're like, shit, I got like 5 grams of carbs, 4 grams of fat, and 30 grams of protein left. How am I gonna fill this in? So it was kind of getting those weird, just smaller numbers, and how do I kind of match the food to that? So I would say that was probably the biggest challenge, is how to finalize your day. And I was never a big planner, so it's not like I was wanting to go and say every Sunday make 7 days of meals. That's just not us. That's not what we like to do. We like to go out to eat. So yeah, I would say mostly it was just kind of figuring out exactly the food throughout the day, just on a whim to do that. And then kind of overcoming that was a lot, not necessarily meal prepping, but it was planning for the day. So we kind of know where we want to go to dinner. So I'll look at that restaurant and kind of make a meal choice ahead of time. So that way I can put it in at least a rough estimate in the calculator and in my fitness pal. And I was kind of just doing the day like that, to where I would kind of plan around my dinner. And it made it a lot easier at the end of the day to kind of fit everything else in earlier. And then you can kind of plan for a snack afterwards, or a dessert, if you want to call it that. But it was really just kind of thinking ahead of the day of what you want to do. So that's what worked for me.
I appreciate you breaking it down. Something that I want to tease out of that is you weren't meal prepping all the time. And I think that's a misnomer for clients, not only of DLDNation, but any coaching team, is they think that they're going to have to ardently track their macros every single day. They're going to have to meal prep for every single day. And what I was hearing you say, Chris, is that you not only weren't tracking all the time, you were estimating, which is something that we coach. And so those restaurants that maybe won't fit in MyFitnessPal, you at least estimate it, you're eating intuitively, and you weren't having a meal prep every single meal every single day. You were able to pick the restaurants that you guys were able to go to and then decide what you're going to eat in there. I'm curious, and this is a big reason why I wanted to have you on the show. Being a pilot, you're on the go so much. And so you already talked about how you and your partner planned for days when you're at home, but when you were flying, how did you stay so consistent with your macros? And the reason why I ask is I know some of your answers are going to help people who are listening, because you were able to do it in like very difficult mode. Like if we were playing a video game, you're like, all right, I'm literally flying to another city. I'm going to be in a seat for a few hours.
Yeah.
I'm going to be eating airport food or whatever that is. And so if you were able to do it on hard mode, so many other people are going to be able to do it in their lives. So what were some tricks and hacks that you used while you were on the road?
Right. Well, I would say most people, just even if you're not a pilot, you know where you're going, you know where you're staying. So what I would end up doing is before I leave for my trip, I would kind of look at where am I staying, what hotel is it, and I would be kind of Googling what's the food around, like what restaurants are around. Chipotle became a very big friend because of their nutrition calculator on their website. So a lot of the stuff I would kind of look on their websites to see, do they have a nutrition calculator that makes it easier to kind of plug and play. But otherwise, I mean, I was just looking ahead at what city and what hotel I'm at, where could I go eat dinner, what hotel or what airports am I going through, and what kind of food do they have there. And I'm just kind of planning my day that way. The other side of that was my gym bag turned into my food bag. So I would be adding protein shakes, tons of different bars, whether it's like a protein bar or just like one of those chewy nutrition bars that's just carbs, one of the oatmeal ones. So I would be bringing just a ton of different shit with me, just to, if I needed extra carbs, I got a bar for that. If I needed a bunch of protein, I got a shake for that. If I needed kind of like an all-around meal replacement, I got a bar for that. So that kind of helped plug and play, or plug in kind of where I wasn't able to get food from, say, an airport restaurant or at this whatever the city is I'm laying over at. So it was kind of maintaining options on me at all times. So that helped a lot.
It sounds like you're an all-star at planning in advance. I have to imagine that you do this for being a pilot and managing people the way that you do. You have to do some planning in advance. And so was that in your mind as you started to plan in advance with your fitness and nutrition, that, hey, I'm planning in my career over here, so I'm just going to kind of start doing the same thing over here? Or were you thinking something differently? Because the reason why I ask, a ton of people will often tell us, clients will often share that they don't feel like they have time to plan in advance and they're not sure if they can do it. And so what did that process look like? Did you feel like you had to sort of like ease into it, or did it come naturally?
Maybe a little bit naturally, just because of the nature of the job, but at the same time, it's just a game. You're kind of playing that game as to how you can fit your pieces in there and make everything work. I mean, I don't know, I've told you plenty of times, there's days where I've been, I don't know, 200, 300, 400, 500 calories under. It just happens, and you live and you learn. It's not a big deal. There's times I've had to, or like that one day I told you that the Uber Eats delivered the wrong food, and instead of getting my Chipotle, I got freaking, I think it was like TGI Fridays, like double bacon cheeseburger and French fries, that they swapped the orders. I'm like, well, I got to eat. So I got to eat. There you go. There's food. But it just happens. I kind of learned to shrug that off.
Well, first off, I really appreciate that mentality of, hey, you get another crack at it. Like, yeah. I'll often talk with clients if they don't have a perfect day, or, you know, something gets messed up with their food. And like you said, Chris, they got to eat. And one might feel stress over that, which I totally understand. But I'll often encourage the perspective shift of, well, hey, what can I learn from today? And let me shift that to tomorrow, because I'm going to get a brand new day to be able to do that. So I just appreciate you sharing that mentality of looking at it as a game, because I think that's super important. And then also looking at each day as an opportunity to get better, learning from the day previous, et cetera, et cetera. I want to go back to you losing 40 pounds. Have you done, I'm sure you have, what I'll often ask clients, which is like pick up a 40-pound dumbbell and be like, oh my God, I don't have to have this on me anymore.
Yep, for sure. It's eye-opening. You just don't think it's that much, but it is.
Yeah, definitely. So what would you say, and you and I can sort of ping pong back and forth, what were some challenges in your cut, like as we started to pull food, as we started to lower your macros? Because it sounds like you were doing a really great job at planning ahead. You already kind of knew where you could eat, what you could eat. And so were there challenges that you noticed on a nutrition side of things where you had to eat less and figure that out? Was there energy level concerns? Did you have to space food out? You know, what were some challenges on your cut?
I never had too much with energy concerns. If there were, it was so minute with each kind of drop that you just don't really recognize it if there was any. But I don't necessarily, nothing sticks out as to energy concerns. The biggest problem or the biggest challenge probably was more, you're used to eating either certain food or eating so much that I kind of started off doing that, and then you're like, oh shit, I don't have a lot of macros left for the rest of the day. So you're kind of learning where you need to substitute that stuff. So I ended up, instead of snacking on, I don't know, chips or trail mix or something like that, it would be more like low calorie veggies, like broccoli, carrots, pickles, I mean, that kind of stuff. And that helped a lot. And I would notice that I also started, as I was cutting more, I was drinking more water. I don't think that was necessarily on purpose. I think I just ended up doing it because it helped satisfy the hunger. Not that there was not much hunger, but it was just, it kept something going in constantly. So yeah, the biggest challenge was kind of adjusting to the food. So I was just adjusting to lower calorie foods that I was used to eating, and just subconsciously increasing water intake.
Those are some couple major keys for being able to manage not eating as much when one is trying to lose weight or cutting. And what I loved what you talked about, Chris, was the incremental drops, because so many people in this country, around the world, will try fad diets, and I'm using air quotes, that will pull a ton of food from them quickly. And as we know here at DLDNation, that's not the healthiest, nor is it going to be the most comfortable. So I think it's profound that you were like, well, you were just taking food away incrementally, so I really didn't notice that. So the hunger wasn't really prevalent. It was more so you got used to eating a certain way, and then you poke your head up and be like, oh my God, like I don't have any macros left for the rest of the day. I need to make that adjustment. So kudos to you for making that adjustment. And then also drinking more water, because that also, it's like twofold benefit, right? It helps you stay hydrated, and then it also helps you feel more full. That's something that we share with clients. What did you enjoy about the cut in addition to just losing a ton of weight?
What did I enjoy about it? It kind of seemed like a weekly challenge. And then it was also nice to kind of see, it was kind of looking forward to the check-ins and how do I compare, like how much am I actually losing? But it was just kind of cool to see the change every week. Even though you don't necessarily see a change week to week, you could always say a couple weeks difference. It was easier to see. And it was just, it's eye-opening to see the transformation. When you think you're healthy, and then you're like, I wasn't necessarily that healthy. And so it improved a lot more. But it was just the fun of seeing that, probably. Seeing the transformation.
And then you had to have been getting some props and some kudos from people around you. I imagine your clothes were fitting a lot better. Was that motivating, inspiring as well when people were noticing like your gains and what you were doing?
Yeah, I mean, I would almost say it almost got annoying. People were like, oh my God, you lost so much weight. Like, you look skinny. But I mean, that's not necessarily the goal, to look skinny. It was more me improving my own health, as opposed to wanting people to be like, oh yeah, you just look like you lost so much weight and now you're skinny. But the other side of that was clothes actually didn't fit better. They were actually getting looser. So I ended up buying a lot more clothes to fit my 40-pound less body. So
that's something on a weight loss journey that no one prepares you for, the whole having to buy some new clothes.
Yeah.
Also, I imagine you may be going the other way now that we're in a bulk, which we'll get to here in a moment. But you'd mentioned overall health, because like you said, it's not, the goal isn't exactly to look skinny, it's to become a healthier version of you. And you had to deal with some back issues and some challenges when you and I started. So what were those? Like, what was going on with your back when you first started?
I had been doing some deadlifts when I was living in Seattle, doing some regional stuff. And I mean, of course, like I said, swimming and strength and conditioning background, I knew everything I was doing. So that didn't turn out to be the case. And I herniated a disc doing deadlifts, my L4, L5. So I stopped doing the deadlifts and went to leg press and did a set on there. And I was like, oh no, I need to go home. So I just left, and it ended up basically being almost in tears just standing up after that happened. So that was a huge challenge, and it can still be a challenge, as you and I know. But basically always having to think about form and what am I doing, how am I stretching, and all that kind of stuff to make it a lot better. And it was always like a massive up and down roller coaster before working with you. And I was always hesitant to do a lot of the stuff you were having me do, just because I was afraid of my back. And I didn't think about it until, I don't know, a couple months ago when I was talking to you about it. It's like, wow, my back issues have actually gone down a ton. And that's because my entire core, my abs, my back, all my stabilizing muscles have gotten so much stronger that now I don't really have the issues as much as I used to. And I never could have imagined lifting as much as I have been before working with you and before strengthening all those muscles. So it's helped a ton.
Well, first off, I appreciate you trusting me and us to help out with your back, because we ask when clients start, and you to fill this out as well, like, please let us know of any injuries to be aware of. And you let me know of the herniated discs, what was going on in your back. And so what did we do? Because I'd love to hear from you, that really started to help stabilize those muscles, build strength, because you and I approached it very tactically, and you were doing things differently than you had been. So what were some of those things? And then I can sort of fill in the gaps as well.
The one big one that sticks out is when we were wanting to start doing deadlifts. I basically told you I didn't want to do them, obviously, because that's what kind of screwed my back in the first place. But we ended up switching to rack pulls. And so what I ended up doing was essentially starting off kind of at a normal rack pull position, slowly incrementally adding weight, and then every couple of weeks I was basically using safety bars. So I would just drop a pin every couple of weeks, just drop another pin. So it's getting lower and lower and lower. So I was kind of slowly getting my back ready for a full-on deadlift. And I still actually don't do them completely from the floor. The plates are about, 6 inches off the ground. It's just, my body just doesn't do well with them on the ground. That's fine. So I just have permanently adjusted them. I don't think that's necessarily abnormal, but it was the same thing with the squats. I learned I needed to have my heels elevated. So I just put 5-pound plates under my heels, and that helps get my back in a better position for squatting. And it was just starting slow, low weights, getting my body used to it, and then incrementally adding. It was just all this incremental stuff that helps slowly get it built up. So
also, I would say it's probably not unusual for someone who's 6'6" to have the bar raised off the ground a little bit when doing deadlifts. It's just you have so far down to go, and so much more of a movement than someone who's, say, like 5'10" or 6 feet. And so I think having them raised, I think that might be where you always are, because you are so tall. I appreciated, Chris, not only you trusting me, but then also the fact that I never really pushed you to do it. Like, I know you and I would have conversations, and we'd come up with solutions, and then, hey, let's start out really, really light. Let's work incrementally. How does this feel? Get back to me. And that was something in your check-in, right? That I was always asking, like, how's your back feeling? How's it going? And you were like, hey, it's feeling great. Like, I think we can, lower those safety bars a little bit and go from there. But basically going from I'm not deadlifting to where you are now, what do you rep in terms of deadlifts? Just to give people an idea of like what that journey's been like from I don't deadlift.
Recently?
Sure.
I've gotten up to like 245, 255. And I remember starting off around 95. And it was about the same with squats too. So kind of right around the same weight range.
I love it. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that, Chris. And we're going to make sure your back stays super tough. You also started using a weight belt. We didn't use that right away, but it's something that you use when you're
Sure.
lifting heavy now, right?
Yep, absolutely. I started basically warming up without it, and then pretty much every exercise, even if it's just something that's not necessarily spinal loading, I still wear it just on leg days, just period, just for safety. Same thing with the wrist straps. Been using
Yeah,
those
because
more.
now
Thanks to
you're
you.
lifting. Yeah. Chris is lifting some heavy weights and he was complaining about some wrist issues. And I recommended wearing those wrist wraps, which I would recommend for everybody. Just kind of me on my soapbox. I sort of consider them taping the ankles for people who are familiar with that from a basketball, football, soccer perspective. We don't do it all the time. Like Chris said, when he's warming up, he doesn't have those things on, but when we go up in weight and we add more weight, and basically like one tweak, like with a overhead military press using a barbell, like if the wrist just tweaks a little bit, it can, get us out of the gym for a couple weeks. And so that's why I use those wrist wraps. Thankfully they have them on Amazon for like $10, so you can get them there. Chris is wearing a tank top and he just reached around one arm to scratch his back, and I saw his big biceps. So that's going to segue us into his bulk. And so you lost 40 pounds. And so what inspired you to be like, I want to go the other way, I want to start adding mass to my frame?
I don't know, kind of I've always had an image in my head, and of course social media kind of accentuates that, because you see people on Instagram, you follow people, and you're like, that's what kind of like my body image. That's my goal. And I know I've shared a couple of those with you. So it's just, again, it's just another challenge. We did the challenge of doing the cut, and now it's back to the challenge of going the opposite way, which is difficult in itself. But yeah, it's just kind of getting to that self-image of yourself. Basically not perfecting it, but improving it.
Yeah, and being happy with what we look at in the mirror. I think it's interesting. You and I could put some photos together with where you are now, because you lost 40 pounds in your cut, and then now you've gained, if I had to guess, probably around like 25 pounds back, maybe 30 pounds back, somewhere in there. And
25, yeah.
Your body looks completely different from that same weight when you were on the way down. You were also very open to coaching, which, surprise, surprise, someone who's a D1 athlete is open to being coached. And Chris originally shared these visions for where he wanted his aesthetics to go. And I basically responded saying that we were going to have to bulk, add some more mass to your frame, and then cut. You were down for that journey. And so now you've not only been able to do that, but you're now lifting more. You've been really nice to send me photos that your partner catches of you, like washing the car, or you guys are out on a hike. And those photos, you look more massive than you do in, let's say, progress photos, which is a good reminder for those listening that the progress photos may not always tell the whole story. Chris has caught some great lighting on vacation and sent me some photos, which I love. But you'd mentioned some challenges inherently with the bulk. Kind of what were those? And then what were some ways that you overcame them? Were they mainly with food or with lifting?
It was mostly food. Lifting clearly comes back with the extra energy that you're putting in. But the hard part is just sometimes getting all the food in, especially, again, traveling. You're having to carry food with you just to make sure you're getting all that in there. And even then, it doesn't always happen. So I got so used to cutting out fats from the cut. Like, I cut out dairy completely. And I mean, that's just helped in its own way, regardless of reducing fat intake. So I'm used to not eating cheese or, say, milk. So I mean, that's where a lot of the fat comes from. And I got used to not eating any red meat, or very rarely eating red meat. So I'm having to readjust kind of what I was used to eating. So a lot more rice, a lot more potatoes and that kind of stuff. So a lot of fruit too. I'm always eating bananas and apples. Those are my go-to fruits. But and then just kind of mentally, it's like, we'll add stuff and then I'll be excited to see where that ends up. And then I'll end up, like, after a week or two, only up like half an hour. Like, what the hell? I just added all this food and I've been working this hard. Why is it not coming on? And now it's just more and more food. So that's the That's part of the challenge, is like, holy crap, I gotta eat even more. But yeah, it's still exciting to see where it's gonna go.
So using that last point as a segue, would you say that cutting or bulking is harder?
Probably definitely bulking. It's
You
harder to see the gains, and with how much food you're putting in there.
you
It's
messaged
definitely
me
not
the other
cheap.
day. Yeah, you'd messaged me the other day saying that you woke up late and all of a sudden had to smash more food, and you were like, "How is this possible?" And that's when I was like,
Right.
"Yeah, this is very challenging in a bulk."
Yep. It's I'm used to waking up at like in the 4 o'clock hour and starting to eat just because of my work day. And that makes it a lot easier because I mean you're spreading stuff out. But then on a weekend when you're off, I mean waking up at 9 a.m. as opposed to 4 a.m., you've lost 5 hours of food intake. So it's just like how am I gonna do this? So it's just cramming as much high calorie food in as you can. So,
Something what I loved about what you were saying, Chris, is you were able to add food back, and you would cut some food out of your diet on the cut because you recognized it wasn't going to help you get to your goals. But then as we've increased calories again, and we would do this also, like after we finish out the journey, you cut again and we reverse you into maintenance, you're going to get a lot of that food back. And that's what we'll often preach to clients, is that, hey, we know we're cutting food, but just like Chris said, he can now go back to dairy if he wants to. He can now go back to red meat if he wants to, because we're bulking. He has the macros to do so, but he may not want to, just with how his body feels taking those foods out. We were talking about nutrition in the bulk and
right.
that being more challenging. I want to get to some more positive vibes on the bulk. So what have you noticed with your lifts in the bulk? What have you noticed with hitting PRs more regularly? I would love for you to share some of those wins.
The big ones for me would mostly be leg days. So like squats, seeing where basically challenging myself, like, okay, let's do 10 more pounds, see if we can get the same amount of reps, and then being able to do those and doing it consistently. And the one thing that I like seeing is the Trainer Eyes app that you guys use and how it records everything. So it's satisfying to go back and look at your past exercise, like basically the past weights for the exact same exercise, and kind of seeing that trend up. I almost wish it could be a graph too. Like I wish there was a graph here that you could visualize the line, but a lot of it's just kind of seeing the just the numbers on the app improving. I mean, I was thinking about it a couple weeks ago, say incline chest press. I struggled to do like 95 and now I'm doing 155. It's amazing what's kind of adding that food in there and where it gets you. So
Yeah, and looking at food as fuel, which I love. But the reason why I bring it up is when one is bulking, they typically are hitting PRs more often. Like you said, Chris, adding 10 pounds to any sort of lift is no small feat. And one is able to do that with a little bit more frequency when they are bulking. Kind of transitioning towards the end of the episode, and I appreciate you breaking things down for us. I want to kind of get into what you have enjoyed about being with DLDNation, kind of what you would share with somebody who's thinking about signing up. What are a couple things that you've really enjoyed with working with me, being in DLDNation, rocking some of the apparel? What have you enjoyed about this process?
I mean, obviously the highlights working with you and us keeping in touch more than what we used to beforehand. But a lot of it's just the accountability. Like, yeah, you can do it with a loved one, and some people are very successful with that. But to me, it's nice to have that outside accountability from someone else, which you provide. But just that guidance. I mean, some people are good about researching this stuff on their own and kind of doing it on their own. Some people aren't. I'm not one of those people. I'd rather be kind of have that coach, instructor, teacher, mentor, whatever you want to call it. That helps a lot more with me. So it's helped with improvements on everything. Just having somebody there to help you, whether it's with you or someone else, it's going to be the same result. That it's just having somebody there to talk to you and kind of help you with tweaks and kind of guide you. It's a massive improvement over doing it yourself.
So my question to you is, one, would you be open to providing your Instagram in case people wanted to reach out, find more about your journey, find out more rather about your journey? And then I'm also going to shameless plug that you fly for Delta. You've shared a lot of background flying for them, working for them. They seem like a great company. And so outside of people paying attention on their next Delta flight for your name and looking for a very tall human in the cockpit, are you open to providing your Instagram and how people can reach you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's Christo. So basically, Chris, CHRISTO 308. Not that I have that much on there, but I'm always happy to talk about kind of my experience with you, my experience with flying, swimming, anything. I'm always open to sharing.
Chris has so many things going on in his life, like you just mentioned, flying, swimming background, University of Georgia, still living in the Atlanta area. But also your partner does real estate, like interior design. You've sent me so many cool things that you guys are doing in your place. So anybody listening, if all of that resonates with you, including flying Delta, definitely hit Chris up, and I'll have his Instagram in the show notes. Any last word, my friends, before we sign off?
No, it's just basically trying to have fun and have an amazing mentor. I know you guys have quite a few coaches. So if one person doesn't work for you, I'm sure there's someone else that would. But it's just going out and enjoying yourself, and basically being able to go along with your program. It's allowed me to still enjoy myself, whether it be a holiday and being able to eat whatever the hell I want, or just taking a couple of days off and still seeing the goals, still seeing the improvements. It helps so much to have somebody guiding you, and I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you, Chris. That last point is being a lifestyle coaching team, because we agree that we want to get fit, stay healthy, but we should also be able to enjoy the fun foods. We should be able to enjoy the time with family, the holidays, and not be so restrictive. That's what we preach here at DLDNation. So I appreciate you touching on that, Chris. Well, dude, thank you again. Hang on here in a moment, because you and I will still be here once I stop recording, but thank you again.
Thanks, Sean.